Hi, and welcome to CMPP's Speakers for Schools programme. My name's Rachel, and today I'm going to be chatting to Natalie Alden. And she is the Director and Enterprise Architect of Bespoke IT Solutions. So she's going to tell us a little bit about what that actually is. So, hi, Natalie.
Hi, Rachel.
Thank you for joining me today.
Not a problem.
So, can you tell me, let's start first of all then, what does a Director and Enterprise Architect actually do?
Okay, so basically, I own my own business, and that's what I'm a director of. So I've got just over 30 employees, and it's the day-to-day administration of that business is the director side of things. Obviously, I've got a team of management and other people around to help me with that. And then the enterprise architect side of things is around IT and solutioning. So looking at a business, what's its business needs, where's it trying to get to, and then how do we find technology that's going to help that business deliver its ambitions. So that might be you've got an idea already and you've got a piece of software or a particular solution that you want us to implement for you. Or that might be a case of you come to us cold and say, I've got this great idea. I want to be able to do X, Y, Z. And then we'll go to market and have a look at what's around and then advise, right, you can buy some of these, we can connect it together, install it, do this, that, the other. And this is what it'll look like and how we can support it, etc.
And so this is all things IT then, is it? So can you give us maybe an example of somebody that you've helped or something like that, just so we can get an idea of what's involved?
So we had a new customer come to us who had a fire, and that had taken out all of their on-premises IT. So that was the desktops, laptops that they were using, the whole environment, the Wi-Fi, the networking, absolutely everything. So we looked at it from a point of view of being able to supply quickly, because obviously it's a disaster recovery situation there where they need to get back up and running to be able to continue their business. So how quickly could we get equipment in? What was the necessary order that things needed to occur in? All the project planning and implementation around that. But then also how to update them. So they'd been working on premises, they'd been working on old versions of software, old versions of operating system. And obviously, one, you can't buy that older stuff anymore. And therefore it becomes, how do I transition you to using Windows 10, Office 365, the new versions of the applications, things around adjustments for COVID. Obviously, everybody's had to adjust to working outside of offices, working from home. So how do people connect back to those systems that they've traditionally used from the offices? And, all of those remote working challenges. How do I get software installed for somebody? How do I remote their system to be able to help them and work through a problem that they're having? It's all of those sorts of technologies and changes.
So anything that comes under technology, pretty much.
Absolutely. From your mobile phone and tablet up to your servers, your cloud technologies, we pretty much do it all.
I bet that's made you super busy then in the last year with everybody
Just
moving
touch.
into the virtual world. So
Yeah.
how did you get then to where you are today from when you left school?
Well, I actually started before I left school. I often blame pushy parents, which I'm very thankful for having, because from a very young age, they were saying to me, what is it you want to do? What are you interested in? And my best piece of advice from my father was, make sure you find something that you enjoy doing it, because you may be doing that for the next 20, 30 years of your life. And I was always interested in computers and IT. So in the fourth year, or year 10 as it is now, we all had work experience to do. And I was very lucky that my mum was in telesales. So she actually got my entire tutor group their work experience in exactly what they wanted. And I got my work experience with a local PC repair company to where I lived. And I went there for my 2 weeks, and I walked in the door on day one and they said, right, do you want to build your first computer then? And I was like, okay. And really, it's a Lego set. It's a bunch of cards and you plug them all together and then installing the software and bits and pieces. But obviously for a 14-year-old, that was quite mind-blowing. Completed my 2 weeks, thoroughly enjoyed it. And one of the nice things about using a smaller company was the fact that I was exposed to a lot of different technologies. So I had desktop PCs, I had networking, I had printers, all these different things. So it gave me a really good broad base of knowledge and understanding to work from. So then I went back to the chap and said, look, I really enjoyed that. Can I come back in my school holidays? And thankfully he said yes. So I did that. So then every school holidays, I would go back and do that and get a bit more experience. And then when it came to sixth form choices and that, bearing in mind we're going back more than 25 years, you didn't have the direct access courses that are available now in IT. So if you wanted to be a programmer or a developer, great, you could go to university and you could study coding and that was that. But that wasn't what I wanted to do. So I looked at it and I went to Croydon College and they did day release. So I did 1 day a week doing my Btec, doing electrical electronic engineering with data comms. And 4 days a week I did as an apprenticeship with this chap still carrying on through. My sixth form were not very supportive. So one big piece of advice, guys, is if you have a plan and it's sound, be confident enough to go, that's what I'm going to do. Because if I hadn't have, I would have been turned off of this course and gone down another road and I probably wouldn't be where I am today. But yeah, so sort of took that on, did 2 years with them and then worked through various industries. I'm somebody who wants to understand why something works, how something works, and always looking for more knowledge and more information. So with each role that I took on, I made a point of learning that little bit that was outside of what I was responsible for. How did it overlap and those sorts of things. And in that way, again, kept that knowledge and that learning going. And that's helped me move up the ranks, as it were, in terms of starting as a junior, dropping the junior title very quickly, moving up to department lead and technical team leaders and technical architect and then enterprise architect and so on. So it is just that, you've got to have a bit of drive about you, make it your business to expand what you know. I signed up and did some work with the Open University as well. So I was working full time, planning a wedding, moving house and studying with the OU at one point. If you want something doing, ask a busy person. It's always my my motto. But yeah, so it's all of those sorts of things of just having that motivation to get out there. It's not going to present itself to you. You've got to work for it. You've got to make it your objective and work to get there.
I mean, that sounds so interesting as well. Electronic engineering sounds interesting in itself, and just being able to go in and build a computer, that sounds quite exciting to me, but something that I probably would be a bit afraid of getting involved in. So so electronical engineering, what is actually involved in, because you use the word engineering then, so just elaborate a little bit on that if you don't mind.
Yeah, so I did my Btec ONC, which is Ordinary National Certificate, and HNC, Higher National Certificate, in Electrical Electronic Engineering. So that's dealing with anything from high voltage transmission lines that are sending 333,000 volts across in the national grid, down to building a full wave bridge rectifier to turn AC voltages into DC voltages, and everything in between. I am a little bit of a maths nerd, I have to confess. So when they wanted to do simultaneous equations and quadratic equations, I was absolutely in my element. And it was quite amusing because at 16, going to college and doing this, I was the only girl on the course and I was the youngest person on the course. And you do have to have a little bit of a thick skin sometimes with the odd comment that will come out. But, throw them back. They'll soon get the message.
Yeah, that's actually what I was going to ask next, really, about how it was sort of working in quite a male-dominating environment, I guess. So
it's never worried me. I mean, I think I was in the first year of my HNC, so I'd been at Croydon College for 3 years, and they'd given us an assignment, and we'd all gone to the refectory to chat about it. And this chap had turned around and said, "Oh, we've got to do this, 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 this," and I was like, "That's not actually what he said." So I pipes up and said, "No, I don't think you quite got that. We need to do this and this." And the comment came back of, "Oh, you're not the token female then." It's like, nice of you to notice I've been here 3 years. And it's literally just throwing that, he shut up, and that was as bad as it got. There'll always be a bit of banter and that sort of thing. And yeah, you've just got to sort of, obviously if it was personal, it would be a different thing, but it was never like that. The guys were actually very pleasant to deal with. And so, yeah, it was never really an issue being the only girl. It probably helps that I have 2 older brothers, so I'm used to the sort of grief that you get from that sort of peer range as well.
Yeah. I think more and more women are getting into the engineering side of things
I hope
anyway,
so.
aren't they?
Yes and no. I have had that sort of discussion with HR departments as well, when they turn around and say there are more women than ever in IT. And having worked with some multinational managed service providers, and you look at sort of places that have got 26,000 employees, and then you walk into their main offices within the UK, and you know half a dozen women that are in technical roles, you think, actually, there's not. There's plenty of women getting into project management, and maybe some of the more ITIL administrative type roles. So your problem, your change, your major incident management, but actually getting into the nitty gritty of the technical stuff, still not so much. We do need more women to be having the confidence to get out there and get involved. I was a instructor with Cisco at one point when I worked in a school. And one of their initiatives for Africa was that they worked out that women collaborate really well. So if you give a woman a problem, they will generally get together and have a chat and see what somebody else has done or how they can work with somebody and bounce ideas around. Whereas they found that the chaps would tend to be more insular and say, well, this is my problem, I've got to fix it. And that they got actually better performance and better levels of achievement from the women because of that collaboration. Stuff got solved quicker because somebody had seen it before and they could share that knowledge and that understanding. So there are big companies out there that are recognizing it for sure, but
Yeah.
I don't necessarily think that maybe it's not pushed enough in schools. That actually there's nothing here that would stop young girls, young women wanting to get into that particular avenue of work. I just don't think it's very pushed at schools particularly.
It's interesting to hear actually, because I'm naive to, I don't know the engineering side at all, but I would have just presumed actually that it's slowly growing within the women's sort of side of things. So it's really interesting to hear that it's still, not as strong. It's more male dominated. Wow.
Yeah.
Something for people to definitely bear in mind. And so then you moved on from there to set up your own company. What made you decide to do that?
I'd worked for many MSPs, and I wasn't overly happy. Sorry, MSP is managed service provider. And I'd got to one company, I wasn't particularly happy with how they treated people. And I decided to go off contracting on my own. So I did that initially. So yes, I set up a small company, which was just me, and was contracting quite happily. And then I got talking to a couple of customers and said, you're not happy with some of these other organizations that you're using, these big multinationals, etc. So maybe that's something that a smaller, more bespoke organization could help with, more tailored, less siloed into this is our process, this is what you must fit into, to being how can I provide that service to you that you're looking for. And that was well received, and that enabled me to then grow the business. And as I say, up to 30 employees at the moment.
Fantastic. And congratulations to you for getting to that
Thank
point.
You very much.
And that's where the bespoke come from, I suppose. So
Indeed.
You can make it more individual to people.
Yeah.
So what have you then found in your career? What do you think you found the most rewarding? Would it be sort of setting that up, or?
I think I've been really lucky because I've been able to work majoritatively thoroughly enjoying myself, to be honest with you, because I am a geek, self-confessed. I thoroughly enjoy IT and what I do. And I've been also quite lucky to have met many people in my career that I've got on with and are good friends. Some people that I first met 15 years ago have come back into my life and work with me in the new business after sort of 8 or 9 years out. And that's lovely to be able to have that kind of friendships and relationships built over all that time.
Yeah, and it's like you say, absolutely great. And the most rewarding thing is that you're doing something you absolutely love.
Definitely.
And it's interesting to hear you sort of talking about you really like maths and you really like all that, and that all just comes together, really, doesn't it? With engineering, maths, science, technology, it's all there, hands-on.
Maths and physics. Yeah, maths and physics are the biggies.
So did you tell me just about, because I know we spoke about college, what about Open University? Was that a degree then that you got from the Open University, or did you need a degree to get to where you were?
It was one of those things that when I first started out, there were companies out there that said you couldn't be a manager unless you had a degree. And because I'd gone down the apprenticeship route, obviously I didn't have that. And I thought, that could be career limiting. eventually, when I became a technical architect and went on from there, I thought, I don't honestly need this. And unfortunately, with the OU, I'd got about 9 years in, and I was doing sort of the 30 credits a time type one. And then they started retiring some of the ones that I'd done. So they no longer counted towards the award I was working for. So in the end, I didn't complete it. But I did do 8 or 9 years. And even though I didn't end up with the degree at the end of it, the topics that I covered, I picked because I was interested and I could see relevance in what I'm doing. So I still learned, I still grew because of the work that I'd undertaken.
That's, I mean, so really, you've did the apprenticeship has got you where you are today. That's how it sort of
Absolutely.
started out, and getting hands on and working in the environment and in the
Yeah.
job roles.
Yeah. I mean, there's lots of people that say, you won't get a good job if you don't have a degree. And unfortunately, I think there is an element of, dare I say it, sort of lazy recruitment where it's easy to dismiss a CV if it doesn't have XYZ on it. But quite frankly, I think companies are missing out on some real talent. You may not be the most academic person in the world, but that doesn't mean that you're not good at something. And if you can find what that something is, that's what should count.
And I suppose then, when you're employing people, do you sort of look beyond that as well?
Oh, hugely. I've got 2 apprentices working for me at the moment. One chap and one lady who are doing great guns. What we've done is we have set up the scheme so that every 6 weeks they move on to a different department, so they're getting exposure to the whole organization and all the different possibilities that there are, so that they can find what it is that they actually want to focus on, and what paths they want to go down. But yeah, I mean, having a degree, it's a nice to have, and it shows a level of learning, but that doesn't mean that you're necessarily any better than anybody else at doing that role.
Yeah. And the apprenticeship's a great way to, like you say, actually explore a company and go into different sections and learn
Yes.
every section
Yeah.
of it. Fantastic.
And it's the experience. I went from a field service engineering company to a large global engineering company, but looking at their IT, and joined them as a junior comms engineer. I had no experience of comms, but because I'd had 2 years already of experience in the working environment, I'd shown I was reliable, and I'd learned all these other technologies. It wasn't a massive jump to then go, okay, well, I can learn a bit more, and again expand that knowledge.
And that's sort of looking at life skills as well, isn't it? You've talked about motivation, pushing yourself. You've got to really want to get there as well.
Yeah.
I mean, you've given some brilliant bits of advice anyway, but do you have any sort of final bits of advice to any students to, making their choices, maybe women trying to get into engineering? I know we've touched on that a little bit, but.
Yeah, I mean, again, if I go back to the pushy parents comment, because I knew the area that I wanted to go down, when it come to taking my options, I could focus the studies I was going to take based around where I thought I wanted to go. And so, I already had the plan of what GCSEs I needed to achieve to be able to get to college and do what I wanted to do at college. I had the plan roughly around, what courses I might want to look at college, and those sorts of bits and pieces. And it did make it a lot easier. But equally, if you make a choice and it turns out it's not where you want to go, and you need to think about retraining, it's not the end of the world. Be brave enough to go, this isn't working out, I need to take a check pace and rethink, and then come up with my next plan of attack. Because it's often sold as you've got to know, and you've got to do your GCSEs, and then you've got to do your A levels, and then you've got to do your degree, and there's this expectation that you're going to know exactly what you want, and maybe you don't, and that's something that you will figure out in time. It's easier to get there on that route, and so by the time you're sort of 20, you're qualified and you know where you're going, etc. But if that doesn't happen for you, there's plenty of other options out there. There is the OU, there are evening classes if that's what you've got to do. It's not hard and fast that once you leave school or uni, that's it, that's all you'll ever have to do.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Absolutely. And I think there is quite a lot of pressure on people at the minute. Brilliant bits of advice there. Thank you so much, Natalie, and thank you for your time today.
No problem, lovely talking to you.
Thank you.